Hi, this is an Unreal Engine 4 tutorial on casting. To do that, today I'm going to show you how to make a jump pad that's going to make our character jump. So we're going to start off by making a blueprint. BP jump pad. I'm going to put 1 because I already had one. I'm going to add component box collision. This is going to be what's going to be detecting our player. And then I'm going to add a cube. Squish it down, just move it down, because this is going to be the visual for the jump pad. Now, the idea with casting is that it allows one actor or one blueprint to access the data or function or the data of another character or another actor, and it also can force a function to run on another character. So we can have our jump pad force our character to jump, right? Or for example, you could have a spike force a character's health to go down and play an animation, right? Even though the jump pad or spike have nothing in it, are a completely different class. So how we're going to do that is cast to third person character. So our cast has this blueprint. This blueprint is the class. This is a third person character object reference. If we type in jump, we drag off the blueprint and type in jump, we get the jump node. So what this will do is that it will make the character jump essentially. This is the target. It needs to know what character to jump, and this third person character will be the target that's going to jump. However, we can have hundreds of third person characters in the world, so we need to know which one we want to make jump. So that's where this other actor node comes in handy. This other actor node allows us to get a reference to what is the object, what is the player that went inside the collisions for this jump pad. And then this other actor can be plugged into object. Object is the object in the world that we are calling this jump function to, or we are accessing its data. If we didn't do that, if we didn't have this, it would make all characters jump, for example. But in our case, if this was blank, it would just give us a compile error. And now if we test that, we've called the jump function in our third person character, and it allows us to essentially do anything to have certain blueprints communicate with another. Casting can be expensive if done on tick and for each loops, so I'd be wary of that. And sometimes you don't have access to this other actor when you're casting. If you are doing a third person character, and if this is the player, you can do a get player character, and this is typically one way of accessing the player very quickly. If it's other objects in the world or other types of enemies, you're gonna have to get creative with how you're feeding information through functions and events, and sometimes you might even end up having to use an interface, but that's for another time. Since they're so expensive, typically you only want to do this casting once. You don't want them to be on tick. And one thing you can do is you can promote, right click on the variables and promote it to a variable, and now it'll have a variable that represents this character forever, and it doesn't need to cast anymore. So you can just call a jump from here. If we scroll up, we could now just do this. Delete this old one. And now when we jump, it works the same. However, you are now increasing how much this jump pad will cost in terms of how much more data it has to store. So you have to keep in mind the runtime cost versus the one-time cost, right? Additionally, casting, you have to consider the class hierarchy if you want to access certain functions and information. So let's say we have a character, right? Our character is our third person character is derived from the character class. In Unreal Engine, the character class is what makes a character have movement using the character movement component, and it typically gives them a collision box, right? So a character is a pawn that can move, essentially. However, our third person character is our own blueprint class that we made. He has health, he has movement speed, right? And then, let's say we were making more of the game, we derived a third person character, and we made one that was a player, we made one that was an enemy, and we made one that was an NPC. Each of these classes have their own unique pieces of information and functions that they can do. For example, the player might have a shoot, right? Whereas the enemy would not. When you're casting, you typically how it works is that if you cast a third person character and you're trying to make your player jump, so let's say the jump function was in our third person character, you can do a cast to third person character, and that cast could work for all of them, right? All of them would be able to do the jump. But if you did a cast to player instead, and you called the shoot function, the object that gets plugged in here can only be a player. If you plug in an enemy, it's going to fail the cast, and whatever is in the cast failed is going to fire instead. So you want to consider class hierarchy. Where is the data being stored? And you remember, you can only go down the chain. You can't go back up into another one, right? So the player wouldn't have the melee range data, but he would have health and movement speed. Likewise, the NPC has a name, but has a name data, but the player would not have name. But they both share health and movement speed. So classes can share data and functions, but where they split off as children, you can't have one child access the behavior of another child. So if one child is talented at basketball and the other one's talented at golf, they can both jump, they can both run, but only one can do basketball, only one can do golf, right? So you want to make sure you keep in mind where you are putting the information, and if a lot of classes are sharing the same functions and data, then you might want to put those functions and data higher up in the hierarchy. And that's a tutorial on casting and some basic class structure.